Welcome back to the TRU-U podcast for the 66th time. We have Mr. Asad Rizvi on with us today. Asad is a martial artist and striking coach. He actually has his own gym here in the Los Angeles metro area. He works as well with the meditation app Headspace. And he's interested in spirituality, personal development, health, and wellness. And I believe, Asad, you actually have your own podcast as well. So
I do. Yeah, I didn't throw that in the. I didn't. Wow, why didn't I not throw that in the intro I gave you?
yeah, I had to throw
Yeah,
that in there. I like throwing that in there though, like that
yeah,
you're familiar.
definitely. Podcasts got to help each other out, right? Especially if we're still kind of like up and coming. You gotta, hey, let me be on yours. You'll be on mine. It's good content.
Yeah.
So,
Tell me about yours. What inspired yours? How long have you been doing that?
dude. So my podcast journey has been interesting. So it was a few years back, and I was interviewing for this job actually, and the boss, my old boss, is a good friend of mine. He's also a mentor of mine now, but during the interview process, it was a very interesting experience. He was like, "Well, what do you want to do with your life? Like, is there any hobbies or anything?" I was like, "Well, obviously, I was training, but I was like, I really want to start a podcast because I would have good conversations with people. Some high level people. I'm like, oh my gosh, like recording this and just posting it up would be so cool." And I told him that I didn't know how to start. I didn't know where to start. I didn't have a space. I didn't know how to edit. I didn't know how to do anything. And he was like, "Okay, well, you're hired, but not yet because you need to start the podcast before you start the job." And then I was like, "What?" Like he wanted me to start like I think he wanted me to start like the next week or something. And he was like, "You need to start the podcast." I was like, "What? Like how?" And he basically showed me the ropes of like it's not that hard. Like if you really, really want to do it, like hit like record on your voice memo on your phone, go to a quiet place, have a guest on, and just
There's a lot of ways you can do it. Yeah.
yeah. And then apparently the hard thing was like, damn, like how does one get onto like Spotify or Apple Music or something? And I was like, well, it's basically you basically just need a RSS feed, and then you upload that, and then it's basically instant. It's very easy.
And
People
I
can,
loved it when you said the capturing the conversations that you've had with all these powerful people, or just the people that you get to be around. Like
yeah,
when you capture that and give that to the world, it's just a gift. It's fun because we're going to have these conversations, or at least I believe I'm going to have I know me and a lot of podcast developers or people that do it personally. We're going to have these conversations either way. So
good
why
point.
not put it in
Exactly.
a value add way and give it to the world? And it's promotional, it serves. So like if there's anybody out there that's like, should I start a podcast? It's like, well, what are you going to lose doing it?
Yeah, and it's people that like people just kind of walk up to you and they feel like they know so much about you, like they get to know you, and like people like that I was growing up with, and people that I didn't really talk too much in like school. They're like, "Dude, I listened to your podcast. I've listened to all of them. Like, it's so cool. Like, and it's so cool, kind of actually kind of going in depth as to like who you are and what you're doing." And I'm like, "Wow, like that's super cool."
Yeah. How long ago was this
This was in early 2019.
it's been 3
It's
years.
it's been a while, yeah. And then
Nice.
in 2020, in 2020, that's when I got on video, and now my buddy Eric, sorry, not Eric, Kevin, actually. I had a guy named Eric that was gonna help me out, right? But then I ended up bringing on my buddy Kevin, and Kevin actually is like my main guy, and he helps me out a lot with like my editing and
Awesome.
films. He's like we call him the Jamie to my Joe Rogan. So
Yeah.
he's involved too. He's involved. Like, like if we're talking to someone, I'm like, hey, like Kevin, what do you think? Like,
That's
and
fun.
he'll give his response. He's a smart guy. So
That's fun.
shout out to Kevin. We need to get back to it, but life got in the way, but we're going to get back to it soon.
Tell our audience what the context is of it. Is it the podcast around martial arts, or what's?
Yeah, good question. So I wouldn't say it's based around martial arts. I've had a variety of different people on. I've had a Buddhist monk on. I've had a movie director on. I had a women's empowerment coach on, like / celebrity makeup artist on. I had Shannon on, which is a friend of ours. I've had them, and then I've also had just friends. I've had people who have like certain beliefs, like in their politics and like social issues, stuff like that, getting different insights on that. And then, yeah, I've also had like MMA, UFC fighters on as well. So I would say just having conversations with people that I feel like could talk and,
Yeah,
if I have an interest in what they do. So
that's awesome, man. That's
just
awesome.
talking to everybody. I'm a talker. So
Hey, good. So am I. I'm sure this would be
yeah,
no problem. Um,
definitely.
I met you. I met you
What
pretty
about you?
recently.
What got you into this?
Well, what got me into it, so I was already coaching. So
Okay.
I'm an executive coach, and when I started it, the vision was to just build my personal brand of coaching and just to give an extra value add to the world and for them to get a flavor of it. And then it molded into me, like the vision shaping into, I just want to interview people that are living their best lives, TRU-U, and I want to give nuggets to the world. And that's ultimately what it is. And I really don't, my big vision is to take it into a studio space like you have and to serve hundreds of thousands of people and to have really prominent figures, which I think there already are some prominent figures, but growing into that full long-term scale, mold. But I just have a lot of fun doing it. Like
Oh,
it,
it's fun, man. I agree.
like I'm doing it for the joy of the journey. I'm not even doing it for like a cherry on top or an outcome. I mean, that's fun to use as a guide. Like I would love to have this many people and these types of guests, but ultimately it's just the love of the journey, man. You know.
Yeah, and people love talking about their journeys, like because it's a
Oh,
win-win, right? Like
mhm.
people really want to get their message across or what they're doing, and if you could be that outlet for people, it's fun. People
I
love doing.
found that like relationship building through
Oh,
podcasts is amazing. Like
oh, for
so
sure.
any listeners that are thinking about doing this on their own too, like man, taking a good quality 45-minute conversation with one another that's about their journey and about my
Oh,
journey, like it connects you and it's showing love. Like let's build value for each other. So
yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. I completely agree with you.
I love it, man. Yeah. So what are other journeys that Assad's on? I know we
Ooh, yeah.
touched on the MMA. Tell us just, I guess, an overview of who we're talking to.
Yeah. So, throughout this whole time, I've been, doing martial arts and training, pretty much all of most of them, right? Like jujitsu, traditional martial arts like karate, boxing, Muay Thai, MMA, wrestling. Like I've been doing that for a while. I grew up an athlete. Wasn't the best at like the sports that I played, but I did it just to have some fun. And but I don't know, they didn't really fulfill me all the way. I wouldn't say so. Um, After I stopped playing football in high school, I gained like a bunch of weight. I weighed like 230 pounds. Like I was just lost. And I was just like, oh man, like what to do now? How do I get in shape? And I found this. Actually, I was working, my first job actually out of high school was I was working at a bakery. And my best friend, actually, he's still my best friend, he was working there and he had this school. And he brought me in and the first day was a sparring day. Like, are you familiar with what sparring is? So
Yep.
basically, like you just glove up and kind of start. You really just start practicing your techniques and you're fighting, right? As long as you're not like actually hurting each other. Like you're going about between 30 and 50%, right?
Yep.
And it the first day I got dropped. Like he
Oh,
got me with a body shot and I got dropped. And then I was like, yeah, this isn't for me, man. Like this is like a whole different like animal. And my brother always told me like you have to be kind of crazy to like be a fighter. You have to be kind of like these guys are like they have issues, they have anger issues, they have all this. I'm like, all right, yeah, that's not me. Like I played football, like wasn't really my thing. But I always, like to, hit and stuff like that. But um and then but there was just something that was odd. Like it was unsettling to know that there was people out there that could like kind of kill me if they wanted to, and it's really important to me to like know how to defend myself.
yep.
And it really brought out a lot of insecurities. And I was like, okay, I need to learn this. And ever since then, I got hooked. I kept coming back, and I started in November of 2014, so it's been a while. Um, and then I kept coming, kept training, started getting really good at my striking. Still not the best, obviously, but in terms of the karate, I was like, okay, cool. Like this is this is working. So started holding mitts for people, started coaching, helping out. And then that's what brought me to where I'm at now. That led me to branch into like other martial arts. And then now I'm training people, holding mitts for people. And yeah, I would say that's like my martial arts journey. That's going to be, I plan on carrying on forever.
Yeah.
And then throughout the time, I was still trying to figure out, what I'm going to do with my life in terms of like a career and, young kids, you're just trying to figure it out. Right. So, I was working at that tech firm with my boss that told me to do the podcast. And I was working with him, and he really like showed me so much of like what to do, what I should be searching for, how I should be making those decisions of what I want to do. And it led me into like the tech world. And that led me to different companies. And throughout that process, actually, I'm kind of like, I'm basically just giving you the full gist of like,
No, you're good. I love it.
And throughout that journey, I don't know, there was me and you, I remember this when me and you were last talking out in Hollywood. We were talking about, or at least I brought up how like I felt like my cup was half full. And I was kind of like, well, what am I doing? What am I chasing? What am I trying to figure out? And things were like in place, but if something felt off, and that's what led me to this, like, I guess you could say spiritual journey, or like this journey of personal development and trying to do better for myself, like internally. And that led me to another friend of mine. I have a lot of mentors. I'm very big on like meeting people that are older than me and showing me the path of what to do, what not to do. That's one thing I would recommend to people like who are young and like.
What do you look for in a mentor?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think I have different mentors in different aspects of life, right? So like I'll have someone who I look up to and respect, like in terms of like their beliefs and practices in like personal development, spirituality, right? Just their thought processes like on life. And then I'll have like mentors, like my best friend who are like in martial arts, and then business, and then anything else really, right? So I try to find those people. And I'm not gonna lie to you, like I feel like I have a lucky star, like kind of some of them kind of just fell into my lap. But
I
yes,
wonder if that's luck or if that's destiny.
or destiny. Yeah, exactly. Like you could think about it like that as well. So his name was Barrett, and he led me to this retreat that me and you have been on called Awaken. And Awaken changed my life completely. Awaken really was shining the light on how I was showing up in the world, how I was showing up for myself internally. Illuminated. There's a part in the retreat that talks about like illuminating your blind spots in your head. I'm like, what the fuck is this? Like, I didn't know anything about personal development and like being introspective and being aware of self-aware. And I'm like, what is all this? It was scary. I'm not gonna lie to you. Awaken was more scary than anything for me.
Oh,
Because
it's scary as shit.
oh my gosh, like,
Yeah.
whoa, like Gene and Nathan, they were just grilling me in the whole. I felt like this whole group of people, like eyeing me down, knew me my whole life from a different perspective, and they're just kind of like shining lights on things that I'm doing that I'm not even aware of, right? That's why it's called Awaken, because we've been asleep, right? And it messed me up for months, man. Like after I was like, oh my gosh, like, but it made me realize, like, kind of like the same thing about like my martial arts journey. Like when I got dropped that first day, I'm like, okay, like you gotta either run from this or face it. And I was like, okay, like that's where I knew that this is what it's gonna take to fill the cup,
And it lasts weeks, months, and I think even years after the training.
Oh yeah, there's certain things that I'll never forget.
And like you said, like practicing self-awareness, and I'm wondering, like, how do you do that when you're not in an awakened room? Like, what do you do to practice self-awareness?
Honestly, like I don't even know if it's like I think I didn't even know what being self-aware was right before that, like being aware of my thoughts. I thought our minds were just like this like monkey brain of just thoughts, and you shouldn't even really pay attention to them or control it. But what Awaken did was just understanding the thought processes of when certain that are going through your head, like when certain things happen. Like, okay, cool, like I'm being anxious, or I'm angry, or I'm sad, or I'm happy. Like, okay, cool. Like, instead of just kind of letting it run its course, which I used to,
Mm,
being aware of like, okay, well, I basically like Awaken really taught me that you can kind of it taught me to just be, I don't even really know, for lack, I know, like, for lack of a better word, like be aware during being aware of my thought processes during certain situations. And just to practice, I would say, just maybe I would say like not really reacting too much to when things happen, and just
yeah.
taking a step back and
Yeah.
just kind
Yeah.
of like internalizing my feelings and my thoughts when something bad happens or something good happens or anything.
That's
Um,
it's a fun question to sit around in, like what is self-awareness, or like how can I practice that? How can I be introspective? I think
yeah,
like when you said taking a step back, for sure. I think oftentimes our emotions drive us and to dictate a lot of the decisions and the actions that we make. And I
mhm,
think that a lot of what Awaken did was remove you from responding in emotion and just seeing it for what it is, and like
yeah,
shining a light, like you said, like shining a light. And I think that taking a step back, um, and just looking at it like from your core self, like not being biased in like your fearful self or in your performance self, just like looking at it from your core self, like what is this? Like
yeah, definitely.
what's
Um, there's a quote that I just came by, and like I've been thinking about it a lot, but it's basically like, are you consciously responding to life, or are you unconsciously reacting to life? Right.
mm,
And my whole life before that, I was unconsciously reacting. Right. And then I feel like in between that is self awareness. Right. And
it's good.
when you get to that self awareness aspect of like, oh, well, who am I? What am I doing when these things happen? Like, instead of reacting, like you just said, emotionally, when you become self aware, that's when you can start consciously responding. And that's when you feel really in control, you know?
Yeah,
So um, I feel like, well, that's what it did. Just led me on a path of trying to consciously respond,
I love that.
react. So
Isn't life interesting? Just the balance of use between your conscious and unconscious. It's like, how do I understand these spectacles and use them appropriately? Because I mean, your conscious does so value into your unconscious by what you choose to focus on. You build your unconscious, but then your unconscious just shows up and is keeping you alive in all these areas, like driving a car or breathing. And,
yeah, seriously.
and like if you're not very intentional with it,
Mhm.
with being like conscious. I love that quote.
Yeah,
Consciously.
it's like during, and I've done the reveal as well. Have you only done Awaken, or?
I've only done Awaken. I've not done
Okay,
Reveal. I've done
cool.
Opening and TL, but I've never done
Okay.
Reveal yet.
Okay,
No.
cool. Yeah. So I mean, this one's at Awaken, but there's that analogy of like our awareness is, imagine, or our thoughts in general, right? Or a glacier. And we all know that, like, the tip of the glacier is really all we see, but the bulk of it is under the water, right?
Mhm.
So imagine like the bulk of your thoughts and your emotions um are underwater, right?
Mhm.
So, and the tip is like what you're conscious of, right? Everything else is unconscious under the water. But like, what are you doing? Self awareness really, like, it brings down your water level, right?
Mhm.
And the goal is to like, okay, cool. How high is your water level, right? Like, um, and I was like, wow, like that makes so much sense, like there's certain things that we don't really even, like you just said, like I don't think about like going
Yeah.
into my car and starting it and start driving. I don't consciously do
There's
that.
there's this is just coming up for me right now. I wanted to say there's this book called The Ant and the Elephant, and it's about a journey of this ant sitting on the elephant's back, and they're journeying through the woods or whatever, and it's the ant's job is to communicate to the elephant how to live and direct and to go certain places.
Yeah.
And that literally is like the 4,000 neurons that are in our conscious versus the 4 billion in our subconscious. That's what's happening. But like the ant in the story does end up building that relationship with the elephant. It was wild. Like that's a really good book. I think it's by Vince Pacente, if people are wondering. But like it's crazy, the relationship. Yeah. And even like in fighting or in MMA, like it's the same. It's like your responses or what moves you're gonna do, and everything that you're doing is going to be subconscious. Eventually, you're building that.
Oh
that
yeah,
relationship.
definitely.
The first time you go in there, like the first time I started boxing, I was so worried about getting hit and fucking and just being able to even like do anything that it like totally, like I was consciously there and I was not doing, like my footwork was off, like everything, just, but then over time it builds in and
I agree with you completely. That's one thing that I've seen by training so many people, is that we all, it's also a part of our ego too. Like we all feel like we think we know how to fight, right? But in general, like I've noticed that when you aren't being like consciously aware of like what you're doing, and you're always kind of like worried about what your opponent's doing, like you start being reactive, right? And not responsive. And that's where you start to forget certain things like your footwork, your head movement, or, so many other things. But in general, like I feel like what's cool about, any type of martial art is that it forces you to be present, right? It's not like you could, like, if you get punched, it's not like you could run away, right? It's basically you're forced to face your fears and your insecurities and your anxieties. And when you deal with that, it's kind of like, okay, well, if it's something you want to pursue, now you're going to have to deal with those. And it kind of forces you, like, it kind of does force you to be self-aware, really, because there's no one else in there besides you. You don't have a team helping you out or anything. So
I read a book called Breathe by Rickson Gracie about,
yes.
Have you read that?
I haven't read it, but no, I haven't read it, but it's a good one. I heard.
Yeah, Rickson Gracie's awesome, but he was talking in there about like literally breathing, or like the awareness of his body and himself, like the calming himself and being able to slow down his heart rate and making peace with death before his fights.
Oh yeah.
Like it's insane, all of that goes into it, but like that I think kept him in a very secure, aware, present space that served him.
Yeah, I mean, it's you're in the most chaotic environment, right? One of the most chaotic environments you'll ever be in. There's someone in front of you that wants to hurt you, right?
Yeah.
And he's going to do whatever he can, or she, right? And just you being aware that, okay, cool, you're going to get hit, right? You're going to make mistakes, right? And then it's really just a test of how are you going to respond. It's basically, it's what is it? It's like, it's problem solving. It's basically problem solving with dire consequences, right? Mm-hmm. You're trying to figure out this puzzle, and if you make a mistake, then you might get knocked the hell out. So it's fun. It really has taught me a lot about me as a person. It's increased my stress threshold, really. Like, you think about it, like you show up to practice and you get beat up, or you're sparring or whatever it is, like everything else just seems easy.
Yeah.
I was a server for a while.
Like, what are some of the biggest benefits of it, do you feel like, just for people like that are interested in exploring martial arts or any form of that?
Yeah.
Or
It's a good question. I feel like I feel like the main benefits for me personally, I'll speak for myself, was that definitely it increased my self-confidence, knowing that I can protect myself and protect others. It also, it definitely like borderline killed my ego. Understanding that there's like, I mean, we all have a little bit of an ego, right? But it really just it humbles you, right? Because you go into practice understanding that, like, oh, cool, I'm going to have a bad day, I'm going to have a good day. There's people that are going to be better than you, and just showing up and just be, willing to learn. So I feel like it definitely helped a lot, like with my ego. And like I said, it definitely helped with my stress threshold, right? So everything else seemed easy. I was a server at the time, and a lot of people, they break during the rush, where they start to go insane and they start to spiral and they start to get worse. Or you could regroup and be like, okay, cool, like I have this, and this, like, all right, cool, like I'm gonna hit it hard now. I'm gonna, do it slowly. But I'm gonna get this done, because you've gone through hard things. Going through hard things, going through struggle, I feel like is so important because it creates so much, like it adds belief and trust in yourself,
Yeah.
because I feel like, okay, cool. If you go through hard things, like you trust yourself enough to know that, okay, cool, I could get through this. But if
Well,
you've never done anything hard, you
mhm.
don't know.
There's
You
no
don't
growth
know.
without struggle. It doesn't matter if it's physical, it doesn't matter if it's mental, it doesn't matter if it's
Absolutely.
emotional, relational. There's no growth without struggle. So we
Yeah.
always talk about like flipping it, like flip the perspective of when you get, whether you get punched or whether you get like you get dumped by your girlfriend
Yeah.
or boyfriend, or if you lose a job opportunity or whatever. It's like, what did I learn?
Yeah.
What am I
I
growing?
learned.
Yeah, and I think it was defined actually at that event that you were referring to. They said like our growth is defined by our go again rate. What is our go again rate? Just
Mm,
showing up and just continuing to go again, and then also like what am I collecting from each experience? Who am I growing into from each experience? So,
definitely.
and you've got a flip side, so it's like it's kind of fun reading your bio. It's like you've got the martial arts, and then you got the meditation, so it's
Yeah.
like
Uh,
interesting.
it's definitely interesting, and I love it. I feel like they go hand in hand. It's hard to explain. I'm still trying to figure out like how I can kind of put them together, but
I think we can define that here. I think I feel some
yeah,
value.
maybe you can help me out. But in general, I feel like being meditation for me is, being self-aware, right? Sitting alone in your thoughts and being present. And that led me to this opportunity at Headspace where, I was on the spiritual journey and I still am. And I I was working a job that I hated, but it was paying well. And I was like, okay, like this just doesn't feel right. And so I started looking into other opportunities. And one of my good friends actually, he was working at Headspace. And Headspace is actually a meditation and mindfulness app. They do guided meditations, and they also have a workplace program set in place for like companies. And
Mm.
uh, my first job, I was doing B2B sales, and I was like, okay, like I was into meditation, I was into, mindfulness, and wow, like now I get thrown this opportunity that, I can do what I can do, like in terms of my career, but the mission of the company is to make the world a healthier and happier place. That's literally this giant sign right when you walk in, right? And I'm like, wow, like that's a company I want to stand by.
Yeah.
And I got in, and now I actually started there just a couple months ago. So um, I'm working at that now, and it's so motivating every day knowing that, wow, like I'm working like at a company that's mission is to literally try to improve the world mentally.
Yeah, I remember using Headspace. It's been a little bit, so you might have to give me some crap and get back on
Oh
it. But
yeah.
I believe in the slowdown and in the when we're talking about introspective work and being self-aware. I think that meditation is so valuable. I think that it's just a disruptive force that like pushes against your being in control and having to figure everything out and being all those stressors that we put on ourselves, and then it connects you to source, connects you to
Yes.
like God or whatever you want to call it. And I believe it like that. Yeah, it's just like it aligns you, kind of, it
Yeah.
grounds you.
It grounds you, it aligns you, and it really just, yeah, it clarifies like the path that you want to be on. And I feel like it helps you plan your next move better, right? Because you like, I feel like just when you're clear, right? It just makes life easier, in that regard. So
Yeah, I think I feel you like when you're saying that, like it helps you prep for your next move better, because I think it takes you out of the need to perform or the need to be like figuring everything out. I think that a lot of our like when I before I met it like the BM and then AM, before meditation and after meditation, the biggest difference before was that I was constantly trying to figure everything out and like stressing myself out and making rash decisions, rushing things, in meditation after that, I think it's allowed me to really present myself, get more curious about things, to not need any certain outcome from happening. I
Definitely.
think I let in God's word more clearly when I do that. The
Yeah,
same.
definitely. I like what you said in terms of the source, right? Whether it's God, whether it's the universe, whatever you believe in, um, it quiets your mind so you can actually hear what they're
Yeah.
telling you. It guides you towards your path. And I feel like what I've learned throughout this journey that I've been on is I feel like we have two voices, right? That's the one in our head and the one in our heart, our soul. And growing up, I only listened to my mind, right? Like I would have this certain impulse of what to do, but I would always suppress it, right? And I now feel like that voice in your heart is always right, because it's the universe or God or whatever telling you what to do, what your path is, right? And I fully believe in it now, because when I reversed them, when I started to quiet the mind and actually go with my intuition, that's when my life started to fall into place. And that's when my cup started to feel full. And that's when I started to feel happy for no reason. Like it was so insane. Like I always thought that you needed something to happen to be happy, right? To be in a good place. And I was like, wow, I really don't need shit, man. I would just be in this chair right now and just feel joyful, right? And I was like, wow, because you don't need anything really. And that's what I feel like meditation helps a lot with. And it aligns you.
Wow. That was good. That was good. Like just like the heart energy. When you're saying that, I'm like just thinking about, yeah, that's crazy. Like how it lets in, and you can't really explain it. And that's why your mind
Yeah,
can,
you can't explain it.
yeah,
Yeah, like it.
receive it.
Yeah, it really just kind of happens, right? And I feel like it comes with self-awareness, like we talked about earlier. And it comes from having the courage, not that I don't even want to say discipline, because I feel like it's easy if you just let it in, right? But the courage to step into that like unknown world that lives like inside of you, of like your intuition and what God is telling you, what the universe is telling you, whatever. It's all I am a firm believer that it's always right and it will always guide you in the right
I
direction.
agree. I agree. Do
It,
you have like for our listeners, if they're wondering like how do I begin building that relationship with my heart energy or the insight of it? How would you invite them in? Would it be meditation? Is there certain forms? Is there like a certain awareness to look for?
oh man, it's a very good question. I feel like it doesn't even really have to be meditation, like a guided meditation. I really think it could come down to just analyzing your everyday thought processes and behavior, like being self-aware of like, okay, well, this is what I'm doing. This is what I don't like, that I feel this way. I don't like that I'm doing this. I don't like that I'm in this relationship. Okay, cool. Like take that, be aware. And then like I feel like if you just listen closely enough, like, okay, cool, what is my ideal? Like I just people start asking themselves questions, right? Like, what's my ideal situation? Like, what's my ideal life look like? Right? What's
Yeah.
my ideal next move? And then I feel like if you I feel like it's a mixture of like being in the right mindset, or being in the right like I guess you could say mindset and emotional state, but um it'll kind of happen of like um
Even like, did that thought come from me, sort of a thing, or like
yeah,
was
it's kind of like it's really hard to explain, man, but for
yeah.
me it was basically like just quieting down my mind and trying to regulate my emotions better, and um just listen in on what you want to do. Like, who are you? And I think just to answer that question, I feel like that answer will come to everybody. Like, everyone has the answer to that question of like, well, what's your ideal life look like right now? Not
Yeah.
like in 10 years or whatever it is, but okay, cool. Like, if you're going through this situation with so and so, your spouse, your sister, brother, whatever it is, like, cool. Like, what what does my ideal relationship look like with them? Okay, cool. Well, this is what it looks like. Okay, cool. Now what do I have to do to get there?
Mm-hmm.
And then that's where the two voices will come into play of like, all right, well, I could either approach it like this, or I can but I've always approached it like that, and that hasn't worked. All right, cool. Well, there's obviously another route, and if you don't know that route, that's where I feel like for me, the mentors developed, or being in environments like Awaken,
Yeah.
Surrounded with people like you and people that are like, that are on that same journey, that are of curiosity and like spiritual growth.
Yeah.
And I feel like for me, like when I went on that, when I went to Awaken after that, I definitely like stopped talking to a lot of people because they weren't, they were being hindrances to my growth, and respectfully. But
Mm-hmm.
I think just putting yourself first, really, like, and understanding that, if you don't show up for yourself, like I was talking to one of my clients yesterday, and she's a giver, right? She was always giving, like helping people out, helping her friends out, making sure everyone was good. But you slowly start to drain yourself. And if you're not showing up for yourself, like there's a quote, it's like, what was it? Clean your room before you help the world. Do you know who Jordan Peterson is?
Oh, was he on Joe Rogan, the older gentleman? Yeah.
So he's a Canadian. He's a clinical psychologist, but he's definitely helped me out a lot in terms of like just being. He has a different approach to being disciplined about your life. He has a very spiritual approach, which I really like. But he said, there's a chapter in his book that says, "Clean your room before you criticize the world."
Yeah.
And it makes sense, because if you don't have yourself in order, like, eventually you're going to completely burn out, I feel. And that's what I was doing too. I wasn't putting myself first. I was going out. I was eating like shit. I wasn't taking care of myself. I didn't even really know what I was doing. Like, it almost seems like it was all a blur. There was no path. There was no clarity. And
I think it's so much easier to give, like when you're built up in your true form of yourself and your position to give, it comes naturally, and then people seek it from you at that point.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Like it doesn't drain your energy. I think a lot of folks get it messed up when they're focusing on pleasing other people or pushing to help other people all the time, but then they're like you're saying, you're left on the wayside, and then are you even in a position where you can serve them? And then are you taking away so much from yourself while you're pushing to serve everyone else? It's like that grounding that Jordan and you are
right. I agree with you completely. Like, it's definitely not wrong to be a giver. In fact, I feel like we need more givers today in the world. Being there for each other, helping each other out. That's great. It's definitely not a bad quality to have. But I think just doing it in a balanced way, right? Like, I guess not being too overboard, of like just forgetting about yourself and losing yourself, because then I feel like it could kind of flip. Like, you'll end up becoming like bitter and resentful towards everyone in your life because you feel like they start to take, but you're not getting anything. You feel like you're not getting anything in return. I feel, I feel like it's just approaching it with the mindset of, okay, well, I'm a giver and I like to give, but in order to keep doing that, I need to take care of myself.
Yeah. So just like, I think it goes right back to the whole podcast, just the awareness factor.
Definitely.
It always comes back to that, doesn't it?
It always comes back to, and what's funny too is for me, it was kind of forced onto me, right? Like, I didn't know what I was walking into at Awaken. Like, I really did.
I thought that I was going to some other little like Tony Robbins seminar. I was like, all right,
I know, right? I was like, oh
no.
Yeah, seriously. I'm like, oh man, like, so sometimes, and that's where I feel like people like us come into play who have been on that journey to kind of like nudge. I don't know, like what the word is, but to kind of get people to who you feel like could handle it or feel like are ready for it, that is calling them, like to kind of push them into it. That's what Barrett did for me, and I'm not sure who got you into it, but
Shannon.
Okay, yeah, sure. So Shannon was like, "Hey, I think you should do this." Like, you kind of go into it not knowing.
Yeah. I'm actually volunteering. I volunteered at the last one and this one. So if any listeners are interested in this, we'll put it in the show notes. It is it's an investment and it's a journey. It's like literally a 4-day flip your life, put everything in perspective, like really cut to the core. Somebody used a word of like or a term of putting your heart on the operating table and just being cut wide open for 4 days and then mended back up, and then you're out in the world and there's like a re-entry phase. There's all this.
Yeah, it's definitely re-entry phase. You're going to be sore, right? There's definitely a healing process after surgery, right? That you got to kind of sit back and process it all. And you'll never forget it. Like there's obviously you're not going to remember every single detail, but like there's some things I know I'll never forget from Awaken, you know? But I don't know. Like, so before Shannon threw you into it, like, were you on the journey as well, or?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a personal development guy, and I've been coaching for a long time. I think part of me also is like, well, I've got so many things going on. I'm already doing all this stuff. I don't need it right now. I'm in all and there's justification to a lot of the reasons why people don't do things. But then ultimately, it's like, what am I missing out on if I don't just accept like if I just don't trust that I can, step into this space and just be totally vulnerable and just trust that this is going to be something that is like when she said will change my life and the way that I think and the way that I be, like, why not just do it? Even if I'm busy, it's like, well,
Yeah.
how's that going to impact every other area of my life if I just choose to do it? Maybe
I
it
can
can
almost guarantee no one will regret it either.
No, nobody would. I mean, it sucks when you're in it, but it's amazing when you get it. It's literally,
honestly, I was hurting the whole, like I was so
leg
screwed,
day
man.
and
Like,
Muay Thai and everything all at once, just getting,
brutalized. Like
yeah,
everyone, you think you know yourself. You think you know how you're showing up. You think you think everyone cares for you that you think the way you think that they do. Like you think everyone has your best interest in mind. Like you create stories in your head to justify certain behaviors from people, and it's like, oh my gosh, like this just like the activities and the lectures and the like
it
the
hits,
people, and it hits, man, and it's scary. I was like, that re-entry phase was scary for me because I was like, oh my gosh, like
yeah,
this is who this person is. Like when I got out, I'm like, oh, this is my best friend.
yeah.
And do I even really want this person to be my friend right now?
Hyper aware of language and how people are and
Oh my
feedback.
gosh.
And yeah.
Like, and
Um,
it was so hard to get out of that, get out of that, get out of Awaken and like not like try to like it's hard to they literally tell you not to explain really too much like what you went through.
yeah.
And everyone's looking at you like, what happened?
Yeah, what happened in 4 days? What happened to you?
Lunch. And I
Yeah.
was like, hey, this is what's happening, guys, and I'm about to change my life. Like I'm gonna do this.
Well, this is gonna turn into an Awaken episode. I'm gonna have to release this out as for Awaken.
Yeah, I know, right? That's what led me on my spiritual journey. So
I love it, man. Well, this went quick. We're
it
just
did. Wow, yeah, it definitely went quick.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Of course, man. No, I love the supporting each other, giving each other love, hopping on, and yeah, seeing what life does, seeing the journey. Just that this is part of it. And I think also where God invites in new vision and it opens up that heart energy is when you can find other people that are on that frequency and just see what God puts in those spaces, because there's something. Where can people find you? What are your handles? Do you have a site for the gym?
Yeah. So I do a lot of like content on Instagram. So my Instagram is Asad D Rizvi. So basically, it's just my name, a D, and then my last name Rizvi. So all no caps or anything like that. And then all my other handles are in my bio. To the gym, that's Rizvi MMA, and then my podcast is Patio Table Talk. It's all in the bio. So
Awesome.
thank you so much for having me on, Ethan. This is great, and you're going to be on mine as well. So I'm excited to work together again.
Let's do it, man. One last message for the TRU-U audience, whatever you want it to be. We always end it with a broad message, whatever's on your heart.
I love it. One last message, just try your best to be aware and like try to consciously respond and not unconsciously react. That's what I would say.
I love it. I love it.
Do what you have to.
Consciously respond, not unconsciously react. Beautiful, man. Well, thank you so
you.
much, Asad. Appreciate you, and I'm looking forward to being on yours. I'm looking forward to seeing what God puts in this
I love it.
relationship.
I love it. Absolutely. Thanks so much. And then this, yeah, we'll keep in touch.
Awesome, brother. We'll see
All
you.
right.
Bye.
See you later. Bye.